precious chance.
这个剑上
事不宜迟。曹庆领命。
No standard way of working? Try Capado. Salesforce development starts here.
さあアドリブで遅いコラボスタート
さあ存分に味わえ起爆
全てが燃え尽きるまで上昇腐敗大将は定まった燃やし尽く恐れずひるまず生きるために我手中脚本にないことは私たちで決めましょうさあコラボスタートドリームカブテル
進行
全てが燃え尽きるまで迷いはない遅い上昇腐敗やって大将は定まった弱い恐れずひるまずはっ遅いコラボスタート
さあ存分に味わえ
上昇腐敗大将は定まった
まだだ
生きるために脚本にないことは私たちで決めましょうアドリブで
進 行
全てが燃え尽きるまで。コラボスタート。はっ生きるために燃やし尽くす。
さあ存分に味わえ。
月光を剣とす。さあドリームカムトゥルー。よいコラボスタート。
起爆。
全てが燃え尽きるまで。恐れずひるまず遅い。上昇腐敗てはっはっ。大将は定まった。燃やし尽くす。
さあ存分に味わえ。
迷いはない。よいさあアドリブでコラボスタート。
進行。
全てが燃え尽きるまで。恐れずひるまず上昇腐敗て大将は定まった。遅い迷いはない。よい
さあ存分に味わえ。
上昇腐敗大将は定まった。燃やし尽くす。轻摇万象。
怪力乱神。
连珠炮，跟随我的指引。羽兽无双，有云声，有云声。天有玄月，请奉神旨。旗开得胜。
厉乱神。
有营生。刀剑无眼。 已遁。
奉神旨。不急。
疾风火起。
诸位，得罪了。
杀！杀！杀！
小事一桩。如我所料。剑火连城。
杀！
幽环正此曰：“请奉神旨。”
詹某吃的是衙门的饭。如我所料。
杀！
不必求饶。
开门迎客了。
来了！
幻梦迷离。
来了！
万象盛景。
哇，好险！来了！
定不辱命。
哇，好险！来了！
万象盛景。万象盛景。
来了！
幻梦迷离。
天地之律，万象之变。
终于轮到我啦！
幻梦迷离。
天地之律，万象之变。
终于轮到我啦！来喽！
幻梦迷离。万象盛景。
哇，好险！
万象盛景。
哇，好险！来喽！
攻无不克，战无不胜。
终于轮到我啦！
天元剑气，
万象盛景。
剑魂，来！
哇，好险！
门迎客了。万象甚景。
剑乃圣道。天元剑气。
终于轮到我了，来喽！哇，好险！
这剑你碰不得。剑乃圣道，这剑你碰不得。剑乃圣道。
开门迎客了。幻梦迷离。
终于轮到我了，终于轮到我了，终于轮到我了。
剑魂，来！
终于轮到我了，终于轮到我了，
万象甚景。
来喽！哇，好险！终于轮到我了，终于轮到我了，来喽！
开门迎客了。万象甚景。
哇，好险！
定不辱命。
どうか落ち着いて。
私はチョキ、あんたはパー。そりゃどけ。
勝利は勇者のもと。
触りたい？ダメ。 じゃとやにかかれば万事解決。
お急ぎを。
私はチョキ、あんたはパー。さっさとやっちゃおう。
清潔にします。
邪魔しないで。離れてよ。ほらいい。
悪くありません。
めんどいな。
隙を直視してはならない。
おかえりなさいませ、ご主人様。はいはい、続けます。
エレン、交代します。動かないように。
私はチョキ、あんたはパー。全部巻き上げる。そりゃ離れてよ。お手伝いに来たよ。じゃあね。さっさとやっちゃおう。音楽と遊んでくれるの？やあ。そりゃ私がやんの？私が行く。そろそろしない。
お急ぎを。
お悩み飛んでけ。
れが汚れる。
受け止められますか。
おかえりなさいませご主人様。はい続けます。どけ邪魔しないで。
安心してください。どうか落ち着いて。
爪が汚れる。ほらいい。
エレン、交代しましょう。お急ぎを。
さっさとやっちゃおう。
お目目を回さないでね。
バイバイ。そりゃ
私が行く。
めんどい。
ただいま。
めんどいな。
隙を直視してはならない。
じゃあね。おかえりなさいませご主人様。
I've found that it's kind of not something that I'm too worried about overall, like as I'm changing items going up, because as you're going through the campaign, you're finding new base types, you're getting new things, you're kind of constantly upgrading, and it kind of hasn't really ended up being a thing where I'm worried about that. If you equip a new item and you're like, I lack this resistance, generally speaking, I'll like, oh, okay, well, I'll add another socket or two to this, and then I'll get the resistance rune out of that out of my stash and use that. So it's kind of ended up being a thing where like just fixing that resistance tends to be a problem that you do after deciding to upgrade anyway. So that's kind of been okay. And it's worth mentioning that with the runes, because they're kind of like, so at early game, they're more powerful than they are at late game because the values, there's only one value of each for each type.
Yeah.
So that means is that like early game, the resistances you're getting from one of these resistance runes is like extremely huge relative to the other resistance sources you would get. But as you get later into the game, the runes are less effective at solving that problem because the numbers are not stacking up compared to the mods you could get. And so as you get get towards the later game, the things that you're going to be wanting to be socketing are more of the soul cores, which have the like different mods that aren't kind of designed to fix those early game problems. And also your character has more mods overall and is generally kind of like more in a good place. So it really is like, in terms of like fixing problems you have, it's more of a like, you know, first sort of 30, 40 levels kind of type deal rather than after that, if you know what I mean. So I think for that purpose, they work really, really well. As for changing them, I suppose we could allow it. I don't actually see a reason why we couldn't do that, although, as I said, I haven't talked to Mark and Rishi about it. But I guess the feeling here is that because you got to choose it, it's not quite the same as feeling like you need to be able to remove the mod that you would have from one of the random sources, where we have like some random ways to get rid of it. So that was kind of the reason why we're thinking that it can go the way that it has. But as I said, I don't think there's necessarily a downside to allowing you to replace it. So maybe that is fine. I just haven't thought all through all the repercussions of that yet.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like I normally play SSF. Well, I actually have been playing a little bit more trade lately, and especially for trade, right? You could see like a perfect item you want to buy of somebody, but they've like got these like garbage runes in it. So I could see that being an issue as well. It's definitely like I'm trying to go into PoE2 with the approach like, well, I haven't played it enough. I'll see how it is. But that is definitely something I'm very worried about, and hopefully something you'd be open to feedback with when we actually try it.
Right. I mean, I'm definitely always open to the feedback of that.
Yeah.
But as I said, I think from actually trying it myself, that hasn't been a problem I've run into particularly. But, you know, I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. That's fair. How rare are like how rare are the rarest runes, basically?
So the runes themselves are not particularly rare. You get them fairly often. Like, I mean, you'll get, in Act 1, you'll find 4 or 5 of them probably, and then it only increases from there as you get more monster density and so on. So like you're finding them, and generally speaking, like if you're in Act 2, like maybe there'll be a rune that you want that you don't have, but then by the time you're in Act 3, I would say you probably have the runes that you need. Like they're generally available. It's really the soul cores that are the ones that are like the, you know, it's actually a struggle to find the ones you need of these, like because that's where the kind of the higher level gameplay is.
Right. And would you say there are soul cores that are at the rarity of like Eternal Orb, Divine Orb, like that type of stuff?
I don't know the actual numbers, but I would definitely think so. Like, there's definitely there are definitely hard to find ones for sure.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Next up, how does like stacking ailment works for like stacking multiple of the same?
Right. So effectively, so in general, ailments don't stack, right? In order to get the ability to stack them, there has to be some kind of mechanic you're getting.
Yep.
Usually that mechanic will have some kind of like that mechanic may have some kind of explanation for like any specific details you have to be aware of. But I guess the main thing to understand is that if you're doing something like stacking poison, the way that works is that all of the poisons that you do will always be on the monster.
Yeah.
And they're all running. But if you've got the ability to stack 2 poisons, then whatever the 2 largest poisons that you currently have that are on there, those will be the active ones. And then when one of those falls off, then the next largest will take its place effectively. So that kind of means that like that's kind of, I believe, sort of generally how like buffs work in PoE, where you've got like, you know, whatever if you can have multiple buffs on a thing, but only one of them is active at a time. So in the case where you're allowed to have more than one, it's just effectively whatever the highest N buffs are that are on the character, that's the ones that you get effectively.
Cool. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to know about that, but
no, not that I can think of. I think that answers that. That's really good.
Sure, fair enough.
Another question from the community: does mana and elemental leech exist?
So mana leech is a thing, but only for attacks.
Yeah.
And elemental leech, I believe, is a thing. There are probably, I believe there are probably like various mechanics around that will give you elemental leech. It's definitely going to be a lot harder. But what we're trying to avoid is mana leech for spells. Because that can kind of like defeat a lot of mechanics and so on. So effectively, that's the main thing. Everything else is fair game, but we just have to, you know, like it just depends on where it comes from. So yeah, that's kind of the basic idea.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I know a lot of people are hoping for a spell mana leech, so it's,
that's the
broken
thing we
some
don't want
hearts.
to do.
Yeah. Okay, next up, a few questions about crit actually. In PoE 1, it's almost like when you're building a crit build, you're supposed to be 100% crit. Is that the same in PoE 2?
I would say that it's kind of more like earlier PoE1, how it used to be, where it's like you can get there with various mechanics, but I would say that it's like it may not be the most optimal thing to do, just because like the stuff you're sacrificing might be too much in order to do that.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got like conditional crit mechanics. Getting to 100% isn't so bad, but like you're not always going to be meeting those conditions, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I would say that like we've tried to kind of keep things a little bit more in line in terms of having more like, as I said, just like the controlling the sources a little bit better and kind of making sure that like getting to 100% is actually like a real, like, as I said, possible but kind of not expected. So I imagine the sort of expected crit would be a bit lower than that, and yeah, trying to increase beyond that is kind of not hugely valuable.
Okay. What's the main reason they're indifferent? Is that just to like retain player power and not let it get out of control early?
I wouldn't say that exactly. I think it's more just that like ideally every mechanic. So like I'm just a general. I am generally in favor of the idea that like there's the decision to not increase something more is not because you run out of sources of it, but because like there's a like a reason that you don't want to do that because what the trade-offs are too much. And so effectively by keeping the values that you're kind of like can easily get to a sort of certain midpoint, you just avoid this, like you just sort of make it so you get that trade-off, like you have to make that trade-off towards the end of the range. So it's effectively like that. I think that's kind of really the main reason. Like it's been a little while since I talked about this with anyone, but yeah, like that's kind of really what it came down to. We just kind of wanted to make 100% crit more of a like, this is a very unusual situation rather than this is a common situation.
Okay. And do you think part of that is as well that, at least in PoE1, crit feels like the end game? Like you should go crit at some point, and you kind of want to avoid that as well? Is that part of it at all, or?
Well, we're certainly trying to make it so that crit is not the only build. There was actually a thing that we changed. So, so here's a random thing for you. We actually had the change for a little while where so crit modifiers, and I need to get this correct. Like there are various crit suffixes in PoE1, and so there was this feeling that in PoE1 that if you're a crit build, you've got like you can make your build more powerful than what non-crit builds can because the suffixes that are available to you as a crit build are like more powerful than what the suffixes are available to you as a not crit build.
Yeah.
So because of that, we actually decided initially to move crit stuff all to be prefixes as well, to effectively compete with the other prefixes that you could get that all increase damage, right?
Yeah.
And so we did this for a while, and we actually found that like it actually made weapon rolling way less fun. Like in theory, what it was doing was making it so that, okay, you could get a crit weapon or you could get like a not crit weapon, and like they were kind of competing with each other. And like we did all the math and we're like, hey, look, now we've made it so that crit builds and non-crit builds are more in line with each other and they have the same level of power and items and so on. And we kind of thought that we'd done a good thing there. And then at some point we just realized, like, why is it the weapons just don't feel as fun to find in PoE 2 as they do in PoE 1? And then we realized that like this is actually part of the problem. So we actually reversed that decision and moved the crit stuff back to be suffixes again. And we've kind of tried to make sure that the suffix pool is actually reasonable in other ways for the other builds, like making sure that the suffixes are actually like make sense and there's powerful versions of like ideally it's like there should be there should be a level that each suffix can get to that is exciting, right? And so like the question we have to ask ourselves is like, what is an amount of strength that if you got that on a as a suffix that you'd be excited about that?
Yeah.
And so effectively like we're trying to make sure that there's actually like at the high end there are suffixes that are actually really good. And so hopefully we've restored some of the like possible power that you sort of can get from weapons, and I think that's sort of as I said, I think it's in a better place. I don't really remember exactly how this was related to the original question anymore, but it was just something that came up in my mind.
Does that mean that at the high end, you don't want dead suffixes? Like I remember life regen for a long time and thorns, right, would be literally dead suffixes.
You still want to have suffixes where when you get them, you need to have bad rolls, right? But at the same time, we did say that like, okay, whatever, when you've got the higher tier rolls, that there are actually things that like that the highest tier of something needs to be something you actually would be excited to see. Okay. And there are actually a couple of cases where so we the tiering system for mods, for rares, like you know how when you've got like T2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5 just goes up to 5, like T5 rares. When you actually if you actually get a T5 rare, it's actually possible because we haven't got some of the mods like light radius, for example. They don't actually have an eye level. There's no light radius mod that's higher than eye level like 60 something, I think it is. It's probably like the highest one. It's
Yeah.
actually possible that on the highest tier content with a tier 5 rare that the dead mods like that are actually cut out of the mod pool completely. So it's
Okay.
actually possible that for that to be the case. Now, tier 5 rares are like rare as hen's teeth, right? They're actually like incredibly rare. So when you get one of those, like, you know, the mods on those are going to be really, really good, because like, you know that the eye level of the mods you're going to get is like higher
I'm
than
so
a certain
excited
amount.
for that.
Okay, so like that means that there are just like really some really good stuff up there. But yeah, it's once again, can't remember where I was going with this, but this is like a thing that exists for the rare system. So the that can mean that, yeah, some of the rares you can get at on the higher tiers can be, yeah, very good.
Awesome. Very, very cool. I'm very excited to hear that. Like, items is like my favorite thing in ARPGs, so definitely looking forward to that. I want to continue asking about crit. Enemy crit in Path of Exile 1 can be a little bit weird with, especially like, let's say multi, like the Valspark from like Tynvin or whatever he's called, or the Shaper Balls and stuff, because either the entire ability crits or none of it crits. Is enemy crit functioning similar in PoE 2, or is it to the individual projectile?
So I don't think we've made any changes here, but I believe that the way that works is determinable by the designers as they're working on it. But I suspect it's one of those things that they probably don't necessarily always think about, because it's kind of pretty, it's sort of somewhat invisible, you know, like, so it's one of those things that just probably just doesn't come up in their minds. So we can control that, and I don't know whether or not, and as I said, the system works fundamentally the same as PoE 1 did. I just don't know whether, to what extent they've actually like used the features that allow them to control one or the other, and what situations that they would want to use one or the other.
Yeah.
Like, out of interest, do you prefer the like every mechanic crits, or do you prefer just every projectile? I assume every projectile is what you prefer.
I'd way prefer every projectile. Obviously, now I usually will end up building for crit immunity instead, and that's fine.
Right.
But I remember when I was a new player to Path of Exile, and suddenly I'd be standing next to the Valspark Exile, and it would just explode, and I'm like, what just happened? And somebody would like watch my clip, and they're like, oh yeah, he crit you, you're gone.
Right. I have a feeling that I mean, I suppose the question would be whether we should make per projectile the default option. It's one of those things that, like, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. I'd have to talk to Mark about it. But yeah, that's probably reasonable. I think that I think that the whole ability critting all at once is the default for some reason.
Yeah.
I think. So I'm pretty sure that if you run into that, it's because the designer forgot to add the stat that makes it so that it's just every projectile to that particular ability. So yeah, that's just kind of one of those random things. But for player skills, it's like one of those things that we really have to think very carefully about, because there are kind of reasons and not. I mean, like, one of the ones that is tricky for this is Rain of Arrows. It's like, should every projectile crit, or should every projectile not crit? Now, because right now every projectile has its own crit roll, it means that if you use like Sniper's Mark on a monster, and then you do Rain of Arrows on that monster, then you're almost guaranteed to crit it at some point, just because it hits so many times.
Yeah.
And that means that effectively the Sniper's Mark is like, using it with Rain of Arrows is just like a complete win, because you just incredibly likely to actually trigger that. And so then it's kind of like, well, should we make it instead so that ability is like crit, the whole ability crits or doesn't crit? But then the problem with that is that it just feels super weird. Like, there's something odd about the feeling of like, I do a critical Rain of Arrows, and then you start to think, like, should it look different so you can see that the whole Rain of Arrows is critting? Or I don't know.
Right.
It kind of just has some weird implications, so we kind of decided not to do it in the end. But yeah, there is a reason why we have both the abilities to do in different situations.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm definitely a lot less concerned about the intricate workings of how player crit works, because like
just
the
the monster
monsters
stuff.
aren't gonna complain. Yeah. No, it's a tricky one. Definitely would be a fun.
Well, I mean, look, I would be interested. I should talk to Mark about whether or not we should just have a policy in general. Just everything a monster does is always individual rolls. Like, there might be a reason. There might be a reason he's against that, but I'd be interested to find out.
I'm curious how you feel about bosses, especially critting at all. Personally, I'm a big fan of like everything being static, right? And like not having mods and not being necessarily variable, because like there's some abilities that, like, you know, you're basically effectively mathing out what you can tank, and then suddenly you get unlucky with a big crit, and you're like, oh, never mind. So yeah, I'm just curious how you feel about that. Like, mods and crits on bosses.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, well, okay, so mods. I think it's nice to have mods personally. I think because I like to have situations where you've got the ability to like it gives us an access to, because what having mods does, like on maps and so on, is the ability to make it so that a boss fight can feel different from a different time you fought it, just based on what the mods were.
Sure.
So I think that stuff's important. That being said, we did like the idea of having the static bosses for the top pinnacle content, just because that is a measuring stick that players can use against each other. So having that be like a static thing is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So that's why I like the mods. As for the crits, I can see your point for sure. Like that is an interesting point. Like, should we crit at all for bosses?
Yeah, I was just curious.
I guess I just don't really have like, I honestly don't really have an argument for why they should, to be honest. I guess the main thing would be just to make sure you've got enough variance, but then the answer would be, well, why do the players probably don't want the variance? So, yeah, I don't know. I find that to be interesting. It's not something that I've really thought about too much, I have to admit. Yeah, like I see your point about not wanting to have the crits for sure. So yeah, it's probably something that I'll have a chat to Mark about.
Yeah, I was just very, very curious about the answer there, because obviously, like, we can just get crit immunity, but the feeling for me there is it almost makes it mandatory.
Right.
And I feel like in general, whenever something feels mandatory, like remember the cast on damage taken, Immortal Cold days and stuff like that, like it usually gets like changed or removed.
Right.
So
I suspect that the answer against this would involve basically like it's an axis of character development that we're removing. Like that's probably the argument that would be made against it. So then the question is, yeah, like, but I agree with you that if something's mandatory, then it's kind of like, maybe why should it necessarily exist? So yeah, I mean, point taken, right? Like this is an interesting one to me, and I'll talk to the guys about it.
Ziggy wrote something really cool that I like. Let me see if where'd it go? Enemy crits should be conditional buffs you can see to and react to. I think that would be really cool. Like,
right.
Let's say that let's use Shaper Slam as an example, right? That if the Shaper Slam is about to crit, it like changes the animation and becomes maybe a bit slower.
Right.
That would be really cool. Because that does change the fight, but like I love that.
Yeah.
That would be way cool.
Well, that's interesting. Okay.
It's for me I guess for me the big thing is that like they look exactly the same. You have no idea if it's gonna crit or not.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's a very good argument. Like it is a very good point. I'd be interested to hear if Mark has any particular reason against that. Maybe he doesn't. Like it is a very interesting point.
Yeah. Cool. More questions about monsters. Do they still get charges? And if so, how do they work?
So charges don't have any inherent bonus anymore.
Yeah.
So therefore, monsters don't currently get charges. I suspect it's the kind of thing where we might come up with some interesting thing to use them for in the future. But currently, there's just no reason for them to exist. So they just don't get them.
Cool. A lot of people are curious about support characters and how they fit into Path of Exile 2 for those that want to play with their friends and make OP combos together.
So I would say it's sort of interesting, right? Because what we don't have is the support character in the way that PoE 1 had it, where it was like just a literal kind of AFK. Well, you walk around behind them, you don't really do anything. So I would say that like for that, like we still have things like that. Like you've got scepters and stuff like that that can give people bonuses. But I would say that support characters in PoE 2 are more along the lines of like I'm debuffing monsters actively, or I'm setting up things that don't need to worry about the damage in order for someone else to take advantage of them. These kind of things. So like, you can make a support character that's kind of like ultra slow all the enemies. You can make a support character that will do things like place objects that other people can use, or for example, like make a character that's like armor breaking lots of monsters so that other people can take advantage of that, things like that. So I'd say that like that's kind of the role of that kind of stuff more. But what we don't have is just like I just reserve everything and like I'm just like an aura. Like just a bunch of auras on my character, and that's kind of all I'm doing. So that's the kind of thing that we don't really have in the same way.
Cool. Awesome. I think that generally answers that. Next up, a little bit of a discussion of something that was brought up in a previous podcast. I have in my notes here, talk about respecking ascendancies. I don't know if that's something you've like thought about or talked about more after the podcast with I believe it was
Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to talk more about this. But I mean, look, as I said, it's still on my mind as something that I know players are concerned about. So like we will definitely have another conversation about it for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's really anything else to say about it at the moment.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, that's it. I'm obviously very pro respecting ascendancy. So
Yeah.
my argument would just be it's a very early place to make a permanent decision.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. On to endgame like mapping and things like that. How much more rewarding should a difficult map mod like penetration or something like that be compared to chill ground or monster variety?
So, I believe that so it's a very different situation in PoE2 than PoE1 for this stuff, because the rewards from difficult mods are not necessarily like the rewarding part of the map mods, because we've got the thing where the prefixes are like the rewards mods and the suffixes are the like bad mods. It means it's kind of separated those two things out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now, there is still a thing where the harder mods have waystone drop rate increases on them, and so I believe I believe that the harder mods there do affect that, but I don't think that is like quite so much of a big deal compared to how it was in PoE1, where like the item drops were heavily changed by that stuff. So like I don't know that, like, as I said, it's a very different situation. Now this is one of those things that I'm like, I really hope it works, but I don't know if it will. So I guess we'll sort of have to see. Like the dynamics of what people choose to roll and how people respond to that are going to be very interesting. I guess we'll just see how that goes. But what it does mean, at least with the current way the system works, is that it doesn't matter quite so much what the like the numbers we choose for how difficult those things are relative to like the rewards they give, because as I said, the rewards being given are mostly from the prefixes anyway. So yeah, I guess that's kind of related to that.
Cool. Yeah, no, I was just curious because somebody brought up the point that I think it was penetration and monster variety had basically the same rewards, so I was curious there. So that'll be interesting to see how that changes. What about things like /letter? Is that going to be the same or different?
It's the same for now. Look, we could probably do better with this. Like, it's funny because before we /ladder was a temporary cheat we added before PoE1 was released as a temporary thing before we added the ladder screen. and then now we're releasing PoE2 and we still haven't implemented the ladder screen. Like, it's kind of absurd how that works. We originally intended to have an in-game ladder screen, and then I guess the website kind of had it, and then we just never got around to actually implementing UI for it. Like, so all I can say is like, okay, it's been 15 years, but we're still intending to make a ladder screen in game one day.
All right. So 15 years from now.
Yeah. Sure. At some point we'll get around to that.
Cool. Okay, good to know. And in a similar vein, what about would it be possible at all for the community to get a more detailed API for things like that, like ladder and like making your own tools?
So I'm curious what more you'd want out of the ladder for the API, because effectively I believe that the API we have right now just gives you a full dump of the first, like, I don't remember how many it is it like 10,000 or so?
Get it more to know.
All I can say, and then I guess the website kind of had it, and then we just never got around to actually implementing UI for it. Like, so all I can say is like, okay, it's been 15 years, but we're still intending to make a ladder screen in game one day.
All right, so 15 years from now.
Yeah, sure. At some point we'll get around to that.
Cool. Okay, good to know. And in a similar vein, what about would it be possible at all for the community to get a more detailed API for things like that, like ladder and like making your own tools?
So I'm curious what more you'd want out of the ladder for the API, because effectively I believe that the API we have right now just gives you a full dump of the first, like, I don't remember how many it is it like 10,000 or something people, something like that? There's like some number of people in the ladder that it gives you. And as far as I know, it gives you everything you would need to have. So yeah, what else do you want, right?
Well,
like if you want something else, so you can add it.
Yeah, okay. Oh my god, we can get you a list. So obviously, like, I'm
sure.
Yeah, it's a long time since I started computer science, so I don't have a list in front of me, but things I can think of off the top of my head would be boss kills, for example, right? For the events we do, that is one of the biggest things we want.
Like what? Oh, so you want a ladder for when? Oh, you want like a different ladder for when people have killed a boss?
Not necessarily part of the ladder, just like an API we can access for if somebody kills a boss or something. That'd be...
So you mean like, but so like, do you want like how many times they've killed a given boss, or do you want like have they killed the boss at all yet?
Yeah, have they killed the boss at all yet?
I think that we do have support for ladders of when people killed a boss, because like, don't we have that for certain events? I thought we did.
Only for the first person, I believe.
I have a feeling that the way that's implemented internally is there's just a like effectively the amount of time until you kill the given boss, like as a separate ladder effectively, and then that would mean that like you could effectively dump a ladder of that of like who was the first person to kill a given boss. So that's something we could probably do like relatively easily. I will say we haven't like thought about this for a long time. So
well, I
like,
can
it's one of those things.
I can get you like from like the guy who made PoE Racing and stuff. I can get you a list of like API things that would be huge for us. So. Obviously, I'm very involved in loving and wanting to do events.
Right. As I said, I think we do have actually like boss time, time to kill a specific boss. But I'm pretty sure that what it is that like that had to be specifically implemented for each boss that we wanted to do it. Because I'm pretty sure that the reason why we had that was for like the original race seasons we did, where we sometimes had like different objectives, things like first to kill X boss. So I think it's still lurking around in there somewhere. So we might be able to like resurrect that and like. It would be pretty cool to have a ladder for like first person to kill the pinnacle encounters in PoE 2 when it comes out, for example. We might be a little bit too close to be able to actually implement something like that, but like it's possible that it's just like a matter of like resurrecting some piece of code that's been sitting there and turning it on. So I'll actually look into that because that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, is there going to be any form of like yellow text announcements for like first to level, first to new areas and stuff? During the early access?
Yes, so I think that we have... So the leveling one, I think we only do it every 5 levels, at least for the first while, just because we don't want it to be like super spammy.
Yeah.
And for first to enter area, I think that... I don't remember exactly how that was going to be. Because there was also some concern. I mean, look, there is definitely going to be stuff like that. But I think that we just wanted to try and reduce the spam a little bit in some cases.
Yeah.
Certainly you want like first to reach level, like past level like 65 or something, you probably want like everything above that to be like every single level, I would say. Just because like, you know, that's a pretty important race and it takes a bit longer up there. So we've got stuff like that. I don't think there's any first to kill. Well, maybe there are first to kill bosses for the act bosses or something. I don't remember the exact situation, but there's definitely some of that stuff. We just wanted to make sure it didn't seem like completely incomprehensible for like a bunch of new players who are seeing all the stuff for the first time. So yeah, we just kind of wanted to limit it a little bit.
Very cool. I love to hear that. A question from my community was, are there going to be free respecs during the EA if there's a big enough change? Like right now, if there's a huge skill tree change on standard, you get like the free respec.
Yeah.
Because
so I'd say it's probably going to be the same as that effectively. Like when we do a big change, everyone will get a free respec, and it'll work that way pretty much. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Somebody was particularly concerned because if it's respecing, is it only gold or do you have silver guy orbs? I can't remember.
No regret anymore. It's just gold.
Yeah. So the guy I was asking was. What if a big change happens and your build is bricked and you've just used your gold? You just log in, and you're like, ooh. Cool. Generally
speaking, it'll be that like the big patches that do the big balance stuff. We should get some. Now that being said, like. I'm not going to say that every single like there will probably be patches where we nerf some particular thing and then like you know that could hurt certain characters like that'll probably happen. Just because you know that I'm hoping not, but you never know. So yeah, like that might then cause a situation where you don't have a free respec for that reason. Because what we don't have the ability to do is like targetedly respec like certain builds or anything like that. Like so it's effectively all or nothing. So because of that, the like it would have to be a more global change to like, you know, oh, look, we've redone the skill tree in various ways, and then we'd probably do it.
Yeah. And I'm guessing you can't go in negative gold, right? You can't like, okay, Mr. Respec Man, I'll pay you back later.
No.
Yeah, no debt. Cool. Another question from the community is, we've learned that ascendancies and items can be supported. So a logical follow-up is how many sockets do those start with? Do ascendancy skills starts with 5 sockets, and do items with skills show you how many sockets they have?
So if you have stuff that's inherent to your character, so that is to say, like and ascendancy skills do count as that, or things like so for example, default attack being also a supportable skill. These things get sockets based on your character level. Now, I don't remember what the level is that you get. It's like late 80s. There's like, that's the one where you get 5 sockets for all of those things. But effectively, as you level up, you'll get more sockets for that stuff. The ones that are inherent to items, those ones get sockets based on the eye level of the item. So effectively, a higher eye level base, if that base comes with a socket, that high level eye level base will have the thing. So I don't know if the trade site will show it correctly yet or not, but it is based entirely on eye level, which you can see. The trade site needs like Like that will probably take some time to fully be like 100% like every single thing about it looking exactly the same as in game, just because there's like a whole bunch of work there. But we definitely want to make sure the trade site at least shows you everything that you sort of need to know. So I don't know whether or not they will be showing the sockets in that are in skills in gear, and I have a feeling it probably won't, because I know that skills in general on the trade site are kind of like a bit like because there's like a ton of work to make them work the same as in game. I think we're just going to be showing like names and levels, so it probably won't show the sockets on the site, but you can know that effectively there's just certain eye levels that the item is that when it does that. And then later on we'll like improve support on the trade site and get everything rendering exactly the same as in game, and then that'll be fine. But there certainly should be nothing on the trade site which you can't know about something that's important for trade, at least, even to start with.
Awesome. Quick follow-up on ascendancy questions that a lot of people asked me to ask, regardless of the answer. Are we going to have like be able to see the full ascendancies before launch?
Good question. I don't know whether that's in the spoiler list or not, actually.
Be able to see the full ascendancies before launch?
Good question. I don't know whether that's in the spoiler list or not, actually. What we're not going to have is like support for it on the website, which we were planning on doing because we wanted people to like just have all that stuff there. But I think we didn't quite get time to implement all that stuff on the website to get that working. It's possible we could still get them to post the ascendancies early. I'll have to talk to the community team and see whether or not that's planned. We might be able to do that. I'll talk to the community team and see what their plan is for that.
It is pretty much a 50-50, by the way.
On whether or not people want that?
Oh yeah, a lot of people don't want it.
Right.
I think
we did show quite a lot about the ascendancies already, so like in some ways it's just filling out the remaining stuff.
Yeah.
I
think the argument from people that do want it is that since it is like a hard lock thing, they want to like have a little bit of info there, and obviously most people really are appreciating that like we're going in blind, and that's pretty awesome.
Sure. Fair enough. I'll talk to the community team and see how they feel about it. So we might do it or might
maybe
not.
just throw up a poll and see what more people want. But yeah, another question is a low life 50%?
No, it's 35. It's actually back to how it used to. It's back to how it used to be, and the reason is because that was changed up to 50% mostly because of all the reservation related stuff in PoE 1, which is not a concern anymore. So that means low life can be 35 again, and that restores that to how it was before.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I was really curious about that. We were trying to figure out what it was. Cool. Force move, is that something that can be a keybind instead of taking up a skill slot?
So it works the same way as PoE 1. I guess that the thought with that is just like most people probably want force move on left click anyway, right?
Not necessarily.
I mean, I guess maybe not. Like I suppose we could change that, but hang on, can't you? Okay, so can't you change like? Because you know the skill binds that are like control W and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like you can control, you can change those to not be using control, right?
Yes, you can change all your keybinds. The main issue for a lot of people right now is they would like to have in just keybind settings force move to be like whether you put it on mouse button 1 or not. Right now, it's costing you a skill slot, and we're already a little bit for some builds short on that.
I would have thought that when you include the control, like they're more inconvenient, but like the control Q, control W, that kind of stuff, those ones like, are you really using all of those as well? Because I feel like you could just use the like skill slot 10 or whatever the last one is, like at the end there, and then use that one as your force move, and then just rebind it to something that doesn't require precision control. And then if you do that, you should be able to use that. But like, I mean, I guess there's no real reason we couldn't change it to not use a skill slot potentially. But I guess I figure that it's not usually a problem at the moment if you're able to do that.
A lot of people want that for sure.
Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, look, I'll table it with the UI guys and see if they want to do it then.
Yeah. Also, pretty small sample size, but I polled the people watching on Twitch right now, and 77% are saying they do want to know. I actually thought it would be more people against.
Interesting.
Yeah, so do with that what you will.
Well, that's an interesting data point to have.
Yeah, curious. Right. I would like to hear a little bit more about towers and like buffing the maps and like
sure.
If you can talk about that a little bit, because before. the vibe I was getting as a player, it's felt a little bit like Synthesis like, where I would be like trying really hard to maximize my area and buffing it up, and that could maybe sound a little tedious. So yeah, I would just love to hear you talk about towers more.
Yeah, so effectively, so you unlock towers. The towers are, there's quite a few around, so you can always and the radius is actually quite large. And what that means is that generally speaking, the amount of things that get added, like the amount of breaches, for example, that you add when you use a breach tablet, generally speaking, you're going to be there's more in radius that could receive the breach than the number that, than the number that it's going to be adding.
Okay.
So for that reason, I know there was some concern, that we had initially that because you have to run maps to get to the tower in the first place, you're effectively consuming some of the maps you would have been able to use, that would have gotten buffed. And that is true, but because the radius is so large and because the number that they'll add, of breaches it might add might be 6 or something, 6, 7, something like that. It means that generally speaking, there'll always be more maps in the radius than there will, even ones you haven't run yet, than what you add.
Okay.
In terms of adding them to overlapping stuff, because there's overlapping towers, you can still get a situation where you want to try and maximize this.
Yeah.
And yes, you can only add use each tower one time. So effectively, you want to find the tower, go to it, add whatever mechanic you're adding, find some nearby towers potentially if there are nearby ones, use those as well, add them all, and then once you've done that, you get the overlapping radii for the mods, and then you run them. So it effectively works like that. So yeah, I mean, if you've got any specific questions about it, I can certainly answer
Can
them.
you use towers multiple times?
No, you can't. So just one time each.
Honestly, it's hard because again, I haven't played, which I love. I love that I haven't played. I was just do you like it? Is it fun? Is it something you're confident that you think people will enjoy?
I think it's pretty fun. Yeah, I think it's pretty fun, but it's kind of look, it's one of those things we'll just have to see how it works in some ways. What we don't really know is what the long-term feel of it is, when you actually really ramp everything to max and with but what's the steady state once you've reached the point of just grinding forever, and that I sort of have a hard time knowing. We haven't done the amount of time we need to invest to be able to really test that is more than what we have, so it's kind of hard for us to know that. But the actual when you just play it normally, it's cool. It does work well, and I'm enjoying that. The hard part, yeah, as I said, the hard part to know will be once you've got infinite resources and you could just you've got as much as will it feel bad then? And I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping not though. There are generic tablets as well, by the way, that don't relate to a specific mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And those ones add more general mods that just sort of affect all maps. So that's another thing as well, just so you know. So we've got that too.
That's very fun.
And I am sure that we're going to be playing around a lot with the mod pools and other things like this, and sort of affecting the juicing experience is definitely something that needs a lot more actual testing to really know how far that goes and how well it works. So I'm sure that will be an area that receives heavy balance
Cool.
as we're going through.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of doing early access, I guess.
Right.
I was yesterday on a podcast called Dropped Frames, and Ko and JP asked Ezekiel to make them a question for today's podcast, but I said I would ask them, and Ezekiel asked, why was it a conscious choice to make the game more difficult than PoE 1?
So, see, I guess I don't know that I would say that the conscious choice was to make the game more difficult because that makes it sound like the goal is we're going to make it more difficult. Whereas what the goal was to make the combat more engaging. And on some level that did make the game more difficult, but I wouldn't say that was this is what we're setting out to do, if you know what I mean. It's we're setting out to make the combat good, and to me at least, good combat involves some level of challenge, and so that's kind of what you end up with. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what that's what it really comes down to. It's just that's just it's a natural part of that.
Cool.
I think that's really what it is.
Yeah, engaging combat. That makes sense. A cat in the community asked, will every attack from rapid fire give stacks of tailwind?
So it currently does. I know there was a discussion happening about this. One of the designers was unhappy about it, and so I think that I know there was a discussion recently that I haven't heard the result of about what's going on with that. I actually can't answer what the final state will be because I don't know. It depends on what they went off and did. But there was a discussion about it for sure. It was a balanced concern. That's what I know.
Yeah, I think that's why they were curious. So I've seen a lot of theory crafting and stuff. Yeah, so we have a few more Reddit questions here. I think we have a few thousand questions from Reddit, so I've just tried calling down.
Good.
This was one I found very interesting, and it was it's pretty rare to see someone so motivated after doing something for so long. Can you talk about what makes you so motivated?
I guess for me, I just want to make, I want to actually make a game I'm happy with, and until I've actually done that, I think I won't be happy. You know what I mean? Like I just want to keep going. I was never fully happy with PoE 1. There was always more to do. It's always like it's just we're still not in a good place yet. I want to make that perfect action RPG. I'll just keep going until I've achieved that, right? And maybe that's impossible to make something really truly perfect, but I guess I'm just ultimately motivated to fix things. I want, I just want everything to be perfect, and so we keep going until we get to that point, which maybe is impossible. As far as I know, that's what's driving me really.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a great answer. I mean, there's talking to you as well. It's very fun. So it's great. Keep it up. Next question is: does hardcore still go to softcore?
Yes. So it works the same as PoE 1.
So effectively, I was thinking about actually starting softcore this time, but I could effectively just start playing on hardcore, die, and just continue on softcore then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Yeah, sure. I mean, hopefully that will happen by the time you're 3 areas in.
Okay.
But we'll see. But we'll see. We'll see.
Damn. All right. Oh wow. So how hardcore rival do you think it is for your first time?
I think that would be. I think it probably would really not be hardcore viable, just because there's going to be mechanics on bosses that you're going to need to learn. That being said. Look, I mean, you can with enough grinding and if you really over prepare for everything, right? You obviously can be very, you can be successful. But yeah, if you're playing at a regular pace, bosses will kill you just due to learn the mechanics. There are things that are subtle about them, and you have to work them out. Or, obviously you've never seen everything is very well telegraphed, but if you don't know what is telegraphing, until you've seen the ability one time, what I would say is if you were playing behind someone and every single boss fight you watched a video of someone playing it first before you fought it in hardcore, I think you could probably do it that way. But where's the fun in that, right? You want to experience all the stuff for the first time yourself. So that I would say you can do. That's I would say play softcore your first time, or at least play hardcore and die, and then play softcore the rest, and you should be alright.
Yeah. No, I was actually bouncing between which one I should do, and then it was finally Ben that convinced me that I should play softcore because of server issues. And I think that obviously that is something we're all concerned about. So.
I have a feeling if there are server issues, it probably won't be that it's lag server side on the individual on an individual instance. It's much more likely to be back-end problems, which boot off 100,000 people get booted off kind of thing. That's kind of a different type, rather than it's just crappy performance. I would hope anyway. I mean, you never really know, but I just have a feeling it was much more likely to be those kinds of problems, the horrible back-end issue that I have to get up before at 2 a.m. to work out, rather than the just slow grind.
Yeah. How?
But, hopefully we're able to solve that issue.
How confident are you feeling?
It's hard to, apparently not very, if I'm if I'm saying that. The issue is just I really have no idea how many people will turn up on day one. We can look at supporter pack sales and we can say okay, well there's at least this number, but on day one we're not sure. And the other thing as well is that there are things what's console going to be like? I just don't know really how many people will turn up there. It's really hard to say. it's very hard to feel confidence even though we're doing a bunch of testing and things like that, just because, like, you know, as I said, it's a new game, you never know what's going to happen. Like, launches are just like notorious for like random issues, right? And it's not for lack of people trying to make sure, like, you know, it's not like we're like, oh, you know, just cheaping out on servers or something like that, right? Like, we will do our best to get as much as we can, but you just never know what kind of a random performance issue can go wrong. And the sucky thing about it is, like, you can make some really subtle mistake somewhere, and it results in like a huge amount of chaos for the players, because, like, you know, you go over some weird threshold and you get some deadlock or some random thing happens, and it just everything dies. And so yeah, that kind of stuff really sucks. I really hope we can do well. I mean, the nice thing is, at least, is that you know, it's all based on PoE 1 backend stuff. Like, that's been tested to a pretty reasonable degree by this point.
Yeah.
You know, I think we can do okay. But on the other hand, we may get more players than what our backend has ever dealt with before. Yeah. And I think it's very, very likely at this point that will happen. You know, as I said, you can never really know.
I don't know if you're like comfortable sharing a number you're prepared for, but like, are you prepared for like 1 million players, for example? If that's something you're...
Well, a million is how many is what we're prepared for as far as instance capacity goes.
Okay.
We also are prepared to increase that as well, like in terms of just like talking to cloud vendors and stuff like that about, like, you know, what if we go over this? Like, do we have a plan for how we're going to scale up? Like, that kind of stuff. So 1 million is the capacity that we'll have on day one, like before we know how many people we're going to get. And my hope is that that'll be enough.
Huh.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure we'll get it in 1 million. I don't think it's going to go. I think the chance of going above 1 million is pretty low, honestly. But you never know. You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
I think, as I said, I think the chance of going above that is pretty low. Just because bear in mind, it is paid, right? It's not like okay. Let me say this: on our full release, when it's free, like, I think the numbers will be much higher than 1 million. I think that's going to be very, very high, like absurdly high. But for a paid early access, I think getting to 1 million would be a very good success. Like, that would be crazy. But yet I think that we might be on the way to it for sure. Yeah. As I said, 1 million is what we're, because of the fact that we're like, we want to make sure we don't screw this up. 1 million is what we're getting for instance capacity. When I say instance, by the way, I'm talking about the actual servers that individual players play on, as opposed to like the back end, which is like where all the you know, which is the scaling challenge that's much more hard to know.
Well,
now, as far as like testing, like testing the backend and making sure it can work, the hard part there is, like, can you simulate player numbers like correctly enough to actually know what's going on? So we've got a synthetic test that goes up to 1.6 million in the back end before it falls over, and we want to try and improve that to 2 million before we launch, just so that we like can be like okay. But the thing is that that's a synthetic test, right? Like, we don't, like, we write a bot that simulates what a player does, but like, what if we're just wrong about that? And like, people, you know, and there's all sorts of numbers that you can play around with, like how often do people change areas, and how often do people, like, how many items do people pick up and not pick up, and like, we don't really know the numbers for that.
Yeah.
We can look at PoE 1 and we can kind of assume that they're similar, and we can try and kind of like get things to like some kind of real world situation, but then it'll just be some other random thing we don't even think about that like players end up doing that we just don't even, that can cause the issue. So the other thing as well is, like, what if we just didn't, like, okay, so sure, we wrote it to that many players, like, as a test, but there could be like even more subtle elements, like here's a random example we did think about, but like just to sort of give you an example of the kind of subtlety that happens here. So we have processes in the backend called instance managers, which like deal with like effectively they just like know where all the instances are, like all the game instances are, and like if they fall over, you know, like if they keeping track of them effectively.
Yeah.
And we've got more than one of these, but like, to know which one to contact, you need to know, like, you need to have something to work out, like, what is the thing that like that will tell you like which instance manager I should be talking to whenever I'm going to go to a new area. And so that we shard this based on the area index. And the thing that we realized recently was that, like, when everyone plays the game initially, they're all going to be in the same area. They're all going to be starting in what's called G11, which is like the first area of the game. And then a bunch of those people, like, there'll be a very similar amount of time that people will take to get from there to the next area.
Yeah.
And so that means that everyone will go from there to like the next area. And so that means like all the load's going to be on one of these instance managers, and then all the load's going to move to a different instance manager. It's all going to happen at the same time, which means there's actually like the thing with having more of these is like completely defeated by just the way that will happen on launch. And like that's not something that our load test would immediately notice, because like we kind of have to think about how the actual players will actually be behaving on release day to be able to see that kind of issue. So like that's one we did think of, but like there could be 200 other things like that we didn't think of that like, you know, could result in problems. And so this is the kind of stuff that like, you know, as I said, that you just never expect in the back end. So this is probably like way too much detail and like a big way.
I love the transparency.
But
really
but okay. But anyway, that's it. That's the kind of issue. So I'm hoping that whatever it is like really obvious. Like whatever problem we do run into is like really obvious to us, so we can just fix it. But it's because the part that really sucks is like the thing fell over. Like there's no crash. There's no like thing. It's just a bunch of people got disconnected. There's no logs. There's nothing for us to even latch onto it. That's like the really horrible type of issue that I really hope we don't run into. You know, you never know. We'll see what happens. I'm hoping it will be okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you could just do a surprise launch right now. Then there will be like no one's expecting it. You just
well, there was somehow I don't think that's a good idea. So well, I guess what will be really interesting to see is how big does the queues get on like yeah, that could be scary. But I think it'll be okay.
I'm excited. I'm very hyped. Awesome. Thank you so much for the transparency there. That was more in depth than I was expecting, and yeah, love it. A question about ExileCon. Are there going to be more ExileCons? Will there be one before or after release? Like, what's the vibe there?
So we were actually originally planning to have one next year, and as it got closer, we were just like, man, do we really want to? Are we really wanting to be having to deal with another ExileCon this close? Like it's like, you know, we're pretty tired right now.
It's a lot of work.
I don't know if I can actually, it's a lot of work. And it is like a huge amount of work. So we're kind of like, you know what, we're not going to do one in 2025. So we'll think about the year after that. But we were, as I said, we actually originally like had made a booking and everything of like the venue, and we're actually keen. But then when we really looked at it, we were like, I worry that we're going to be like close to like like if we're like really close to the release at that point when that would have been scheduled, that could just be really like too much load on our studio all at one time, because running an ExileCon really is like, it is a crazy amount of work for the whole studio. Like it's just a huge amount of stuff. So I am almost certain we'll have another one. I just don't think we're gonna have we're just not gonna have one next year, just because it's gonna be too much going on, I think, for our studio. Because you know, it's really fun to run them, like even though it's all that work, like it is really fun to run them and like having all the community there. Like it's a really fun thing. And like if we had infinite resources, then having ExileCon right before the full release would be like the most amazing marketing opportunity, right? Like that would be great. But then the idea of having to do all of that and also get the release out at the same time, it's just too much. I just don't think we'd be able to do it.
Well, it makes sense. It's a lot of work. Question again about bosses. Is every single boss going to be you die once and it's over? Like, you know, you collect 300 Zeshtula splinters or whatever?
Right. So we've actually had quite a lot of conversations about this topic. With the 300 splinters thing, just to, by the way, is like they do come in stacks, so it's not like you have to fight 300 breaches to do that. But this was definitely a question. Should we allow more portals for some of these bosses? Because, like, you know, it's like the first time that you save up, the first time you're going to fight it, and then you just die instantly to some ability, and like, is that okay? And there were definitely some arguments about this. But we eventually decided that, we are going to leave it as one death for those bosses, just because we just want to make sure that there's integrity in the, you know, like in the boss fight, that you actually did have to kill it from top to bottom. It is one of those things, though, that like if it really was a problem, I guess we could readdress it. But like, I think we're pretty keen to go with just one death, even for those for the time being. But yes,
very interesting.
There was a lot of argument about it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I'm gonna be hardcore hopefully most of the time. So once I figure the game out, so I was just mostly asking for softcore players. I'll be very curious how they feel about it. Cool. Okay, another question. How do you feel about safe mechanics like Toda? Like obviously, RuneScape is probably the game that comes to mind, where you can very much, more than any game I can think of, tailor exactly what type of content you want to be doing, right? Like,
Right.
if you want to, you can do completely safe content, or you can focus on like a really hard boss fight where it takes all of your focus. So yeah, what are your thoughts on like being able to tailor your custom content?
So, I mean, I would say that PoE is pretty strong in this regard as well, right? Like, you've got the ability to change the degree to which, like, how many mods you put on maps, and then, like, how much you're juicing things with mechanics for the towers, and, like, all sorts of stuff like that. So I would say that PoE is one of the games where you do actually have quite a lot of control. So, like, you can definitely get, like, look, if you're running a white map, it's not a huge amount that's just going to randomly kill you. If you're powerful enough to deal with that, you should be okay. It really is the other the other extra difficulty you add that makes it so that you're so that you're more safe. And like especially now that the bosses have been moved out of the regular map, so that you can choose whether you're doing them or not.
Yeah.
Like you have even that choice as well. So yeah, I'm a fan of tailoring content difficulty, and that is the goal for us as well, right? Just like make sure that you can decide that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, me too. I'm a big fan of that. Very cool. So, talking about playing hardcore and pausing and stuff. So let's say that I've opened an expensive boss fight, but took me a while to farm, and I'm halfway through the fight, and I'm like, oh, this is not going well. This is not going down well. But I don't want to leave either. Can I pause the fight and be like, Steel Mage, I need help right now. Please come get me. And can he then like, while I'm paused, can he come help me?
So so currently you actually can't like do things like accept invites and everything while you're paused.
Yeah.
Now we actually had planned to allow you to do way more stuff while paused.
Yeah.
There was this whole pause rework we were going to do. We were going to change the interface so you can pause the game and still be able to like look at the rest of the interface and like kind of do certain things while paused or not. And then we could just make the decision of like what's allowed in paused and what isn't.
Yeah.
But we never got it. We unfortunately didn't get time to do it. So right now, you wouldn't be able to accept a challenge while pause. But that being said, you could like pause the game, message your friend, he sends you an invite, you unpause quickly, click accept, and then pause again, right? Like it is kind of possible.
Right.
And so there's kind of really no reason to like not allow you to accept an invite while paused for that reason, because like you can just kind of do that. Like that would be possible.
Cool.
And ultimately that would mean that you can kind of do that. The question then is like, can you get to the person in a fight? And that depends on the context.
Yeah.
Now, I don't actually know 100% of all the rules about this, about exactly what goes on. I believe that when you seashell to someone, as the players call it, that you go to the checkpoint of the last, you go to the physical location of the most recent checkpoint the player has.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can go into the boss fight. So during campaign, you can certainly just like get into someone's boss fight very easily.
Yeah.
What I don't know is what the situation is with regard to maps and exactly how that works. So I would have to check on that to work out exactly what you could do there. I am sure there's going to be all sorts of like exploits and like random issues around pausing and checkpoints as well, and like all of those things. Like I just have a feeling that there's going to be stuff. Like we obviously do our best to think of these, but I'm sure there's going to be some stuff. So there might have to be some tweaks to the rules later on here. But as far as I know, you can do that. I believe. So I'm pretty sure what should happen is, I think that for maps, the last checkpoint is like still in the map room.
Yeah.
Because there's no checkpoints in map. So I'm pretty sure what would happen is they'd go outside the map, they would be standing where the portals are, and if there's a portal available, they'll be able to go through that portal. And so if you moved the portal close to the boss fight before you went into it, because you can't use the portal while in the boss fight, then that would mean they'd be outside the boss fight. And so long as there's a way to get into the boss fight after the fact, it should work. So as far as I know, that should be how it works at the moment. But as I said, there might be individual rules that we can add or remove or whatever. Like there'll probably be tweaks to this, I'm sure.
Cool. Also, chat really wants me to correct you and say we call it swirly.
What? Okay. For some reason, people around here call them seashelling.
Right.
I don't know where that. Maybe that's just in GGG slang for this.
That's funny.
Okay.
I mean,
it apparently looks like a seashell.
That is really cool though. I'm obviously a little bit biased. Like I would love to run like a boss service where I'm like coming to rescue people. So that'd be very fun.
Well, as far as I know, that should be possible right now. But as I said, we might tweak the rules.
A little bit of like a more random cutesy question with how do you feel about like mini games like fishing or just like things to do that aren't necessarily like the core game? I
don't know, like some people find that stuff fun. I guess I see the mini games in PoE as more like the different league mechanics. So like those are the things that we're probably more likely to add. But I know people have been wanting a fishing mini game for a long time. I guess look, we have boat support now, right? Like
I know.
The hideout. so you never know, I guess.
Cool. Two-factor authentication. Is that something we can see improvements of in PoE2?
To be swift and strong.
So this is one of those things where like it's trivially easy to add two-factor authentication. The hard part is all the support policy around what happens when people lose their second factor. And it's like,
you squandered them on self-indulgence.
like, okay, so like, how do you verify someone who's lost a second factor? And then like, that's a whole thing that's all drama around this. And then like, you open yourself up to like all sorts of like support mistakes you could be making with that kind of stuff. And like, it's notoriously like you have this thing. And then people say, oh, you should just tell people that if they had two-factor, then if they do the second factor, they're just hosed. And it's like, well, you can say that now. You say that right from the point you do lose your second factor, and then you're like, why is there no recovery process for this? You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a recovery process. And then it's like, okay, so then how do we verify it? So then people are like, oh, you could like take government ID, and it's like, okay, well now there's like GDPR and privacy implications of this, and it's like, it's just kind of an endless rabbit hole of like random policy and horrible stuff, and so like, we should have it, right? Like, absolutely, we should 100%. We should have two-factor. We just don't, and it's all because of that, like the tricky stuff around this. And like one day, I just have no doubt we will implement this. It's just we just need to dig ourselves out of the hole of all the policy issues around support for this. That's the thing. And so what I will say though is just as a thing is that you can effectively outsource the two-factor on your account by using Steam if you want, because they have two-factor. And if Steam is the only login method on your account, then effectively you're just relying on their two-factor to be able to work. So you still have that option at least. But yeah, we should add two-factor to the regular login system, and I want to add two-factor to the regular login system. It's just a question of getting time to sort through all the problems with it.
Speaking of regular login system, I can't remember if this was already confirmed, but do we still have both the standalone client and Steam?
Yep, we do.
Excellent. Another community question. So there is a limit of support gems, right? I can only use element control destruction on one gem. I can't use it on two gems.
Correct.
Is that rule still the same on my weapon swap? Let's say that I have a lightning ability in one weapon swap and a cold ability in the other, but on both of these main gems, I want to use control destruction.
There's one per character. It doesn't relate to weapon swap. The thing that I just want to clarify around this is that like, it's not like you've got slots that are just like one versus the other, right? Like when you look at your skill screen, they're all just on one screen. That you just get to enable or disable certain skills for being used by a certain weapon swap. So there's no as far as the question goes, it is one for the entire character.
Okay. When we saw like videos, somebody had a video going through the settings and stuff like that, and I did not see lockstep or predictive being there. Is that still a thing?
Why wouldn't it have been there? Could have been there. Okay, so
apparently it's only on the menu
I'm not sure.
screen.
Oh, yeah. Because you can't change it while you're in your while you're in game. But yeah, it should be there. As far as I know. One thing I will say is that predictive with WSD. Sorry, not
You and I.
Okay, let me get this right. Okay, so there is a mode called hybrid. And I think that with WSD, predictive turns into hybrid, but I'm not sure whether or not they've actually fiddled around with the interface of this. Hybrid is the mode that consoles use, but I don't think it tells you about it because I don't think there's a setting for it on consoles. But effectively, what that is, it's somewhere in between predictive and lockstep. I guess I could and effectively what it is that
Find something you can defend yourself
this
with.
is kind of irrelevant, but effectively with lockstep, when there's lag, internet lag, the whole game freezes. And with predictive, when there's internet lag, the game does not freeze. Hybrid is a mode where we still use predictive networking, but we still freeze everything when the server hasn't replied to you, and that's just because it keeps everything in sync a little bit better, but prevents some of the issues that you get in predictive. That mode just works a bit better when you're using direct control with WSD versus and stuff without causing too many desync issues. So that's just a random detail there. But yeah, as far as I know, they still work,
Okay.
and they should be fine. What I worry about, and this is just random speculation on my part, is that like pretty much everyone in GGG plays in lockstep,
Yeah.
and so what that means is that like I worry that there won't be as much testing in predictive, and there could be like issues that happen in predictive that we're just not aware of because of the fact that like everyone's just playing in lockstep all the time. So it probably hasn't received the same testing as what what lockstep gets. So I would suggest to you play in lockstep if you can. Obviously,
Yeah.
the issue is when your heart latency is high. That's the sort of stuff that I'm sure will get more testing as we go to early access as well. But yeah, just random thing.
A question I just thought of was in PoE1, a thing that can happen is assets loading and being invisible if there were already loading ones. Is that a fixed thing in PoE2?
Unfortunately, that's not fixed, and this is something that really bothers me. But look, it's something that we're going to be like I really want to fix that. I really want to fix it. Like it's the worst thing to me is that occurring. So we'll get to the point where that can occur. It's actually been made harder in PoE2 because of the fact the assets are larger in general. You know, like higher resolution textures and higher resolution like models and stuff like that. So. I don't think it will necessarily be worse or anything, but yeah, it really sucks to me whenever a thing doesn't load. And so this is a thing that we will be working on and improving over time. I want to get to the point where it's just 100% the case that you never see an asset pop. Like that would be ideal. But we'll work towards that, but we aren't there yet.
A lot of people are asking about pre-download, especially for people with slow connections, being able to start downloading the files before.
The concern there would be, what do you call it? Data mining. Yeah, that's the concern with that.
My question is pre-download / data mining.
Yeah. I'll like we're definitely more vulnerable to data mining for PoE2 than we are in PoE1 usually, just because you know, like there's so much more new stuff, like just the whole campaign being something people haven't played. You know, so like it's that would be the concern. I guess I do understand the why you'd want this though. So I guess I'll just have to talk to. I guess I just have to talk and see how we feel about it. Like, yeah, the concern is data mining, though. That would be the reason not to do it. That would be that's really the issue.
I'm a big fan of like that I have
It's nice not to be dead yet.
Right. It will be interesting to see how fast the data mining occurs. Like, obviously, when you've got a thing like this, like a lot of people. Now, we do have some stuff to improve. Like certain things will be harder to data mine than they were in the past, but on the other hand, there are some things the client just has to have, and if the client has to have it, then there's just no way to prevent data mining of it, because like you know, it has to be on the client for the client to be to be able to see a mod on the client has to have the text of the mod, right? So on some level you've got to have that stuff. So yeah.
Cool, makes sense. Is rarity multiplicative or additive with a map / monster rarity?
You mean so player rarity is player rarity is multiplicative with the map rarity, yeah. So that's still the case.
Right. Question about what leagues are, just obviously we are still going to have leagues in PoE2. What are they going to be based around? Right now they're being inspired by other games. Is that still going to be the case?
Oh, I mean, that's always the case, right? We're always looking at other mechanics. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to what is cool. And so that means that all we're really doing when we're looking at other games is like, is there something we can notice here that could inspire us to be cool? But like, it doesn't have to be another game. It could be a movie or like some random other thing. Like, you never know where the inspiration's going to come from. But that stuff can definitely happen. Just, you know, can we come up with a cool mechanic? That's all it comes down to.
Yeah. Is there any game off the top of your head that you're like, you really like want to find a way to like get this in PoE that like inspires you?
I don't know that I can name one right now. If like it's like anything that would have happened like that, we probably already made a league for it.
Yeah.
So it would have to be something recent, and we haven't been talking about leagues in PoE2 yet, so we haven't had like a brainstorming session about that yet. So yeah, as I said, I don't think I can come up with one at the moment.
Awesome. And it's pretty much the final question here. I kind of tried to avoid open-ended questions, but is there any particular large engine changes with PoE 2 that allows you to do something that you've always wanted to do in PoE 1 but you weren't able to?
So most of the changes, like engine-wise, are actually on PoE 1's engine because we wanted to merge them so that we can make all the assets transfer.
Yeah.
Probably one of the largest changes that is different between PoE 1 and 2 is the global elimination system. And what that kind of means is that so like any and this was like we had GI in PoE 1 as well, but it kind of works differently. So like effectively, the nice thing that you can do with a really good GI is that you can light objects without having to actually place lights in them. Like they just get lit by the glowing parts, and so you just get a really nice like soft form of lighting from certain things. And certain areas can actually be lit entirely with the GI system, which is just really nice. Like you get the ability to do some lighting that's just really quite different than what PoE 1 has been capable of.
Nice.
So yeah, like that's pretty cool. Trying to think if there's anything else that like we didn't actually port over, but not really. Like, so we've tried to get everything as much as possible to be the same. Just for asset portability. There's quite a lot of stuff to do with like one of the engine features we have is the ability to read this is like real technical stuff, but to read the material that's on the ground and use that in the shader of a thing that's sitting on top.
Yep.
And that lets you do things like, for example, we use that in the, the bear slam. Yep. When the bear does a slam, like the actual ground that's under the bear, like the chunks of rubble that come up are like red from the ground that's actually there. So that kind of like fits to the area. So that's kind of cool.
That's very cool.
And there's a few, that's actually used quite a lot, like in more subtle ways. The bear is like really obvious because it's like big chunks of terrain that kind of come up. So that's like another one.
That's very cool.